What's up guys, it's JackalGoldKick, and in this video I'm going to be talking about Resident Evil. I'm going to be talking about why I don't like the old school Resident Evil games, the fixed camera angle ones to be specific. And I think this will be a very interesting video to do because I think it's a very different perspective. Most of the time when it comes to Resident Evil, when people are talking about the good and bad of the franchise, it's mostly old school Resident Evil fans that talk about why they like the old games and why they don't like the new games. But you never really hear the perspective of a new Resident Evil fan and why they don't like the old games. And that's what this video is going to be about, because it's something that I want to talk about and I want to discuss it, and I want to bring this perspective out there because it's a different perspective, and it's a, I know I'm in the minority with this, but I want to talk about it. And I'm also curious to see if there's anybody out there that feels the same way. So if there's anybody out there that feels the same way about what I'm talking about in this video, leave it in the comments or do video responses, because I would be very interested to hear if there's anybody that feels the same way, because I know I'm in the minority with this, because most of the time, like I said, when it comes to Resident Evil, that's the perspective you hear. It's the old school fans reminiscing about how great the franchise used to be and them not liking the new games. But you never hear it from the perspective of a new fan that doesn't like where the series came from and doesn't like the old school games. And that's what this video is going to be about. And I want to say before the rest of this video starts that I respect the old school Resident Evil games. I respect the old school Resident Evil games and the fixed camera angle games. I respect them because of what we have now. If it wasn't for those games, we wouldn't have Resident Evil 4, the series that Resident Evil is now. We wouldn't have survival horror in the way it evolved and developed to survival horror that we have now. So I respect the games for that, laying the groundwork and foundation. They're definitely important to have. But even so, I don't like the old school Resident Evil games, and I've come to that conclusion recently by dabbling with the old school games and just not really enjoying them. They don't really click with me. And I'll give you my history of the Resident Evil series. My first Resident Evil game was Resident Evil 4, and I really enjoyed that game. It's one of my favorite games of all time. I love that game. And then after that, I played like Resident Evil 5 and 6. Those games were fun back then, but they don't hold up now, unfortunately. I just don't like Resident Evil 5 and 6 anymore. So when it comes to Resident Evil, the ones I do like is Resident Evil 4, Revelations 1 and 2, RE7, RE8, Remake 2, Remake 3. Those are the Resident Evil games that I like. I hope I'm not forgetting any, but those are the Resident Evil games I like. I like RE2 Remake, RE3 Remake, Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 7, Resident Evil 8, Revelations 1, and Revelations 2. So those are the Resident Evil games that I like. Those are the ones I like. That's the style and styles that I like. And in the past, when I'm talking about fixed camera angle, old school Resident Evil games, when I'm talking about those games, I'm grouping all of them. I'm talking about 0, 1 Remake, Original RE1, Original RE2, Original RE3, and Code Veronica. Those are all the games I'm talking about, so I'm grouping them all together. So when I'm talking about, in this video, when I'm talking about old school Resident Evil games, the fixed camera angle games, I'm talking about all those games. I'm including 0, RE1, RE1 Remake, the original RE2, the original RE3, and Code Veronica. Those are the games I'm going to be talking about and grouping in this video. I haven't played Outbreak or Dead Aim or Gaiden. I haven't played any of those games, but I've played most of the Resident Evil games. I've played 0, RE1, RE1 Remake, RE2 Remake, the original RE2, the original RE3, RE3 Remake, Code Veronica, RE4, RE5, RE6, RE7, Revelations 1, Revelations 2, and RE8. Those are all the ones I've played. And in the past, when I've played the fixed camera angle Resident Evil games, I did like them. Years ago, when I first experienced and tried out the old school Resident Evil games, the fixed camera angle ones, I did like them. But back then, and I also did like Resident Evil 5 and 6 as well back when I first played them. But nowadays, Resident Evil 5 and 6 just don't hold up for me. I don't really like those games anymore. I think they're incredibly boring, and I completely understand why those games have the rep they do. Resident Evil 4 was actually good and great, and then RE5 and 6 was just really disappointing follow-ups to RE4. I think The Evil Within is a much better follow-up to RE4. But anyways, when it comes to Resident Evil, back when I first played the fixed camera angle games, I did like them. But I feel like, from my perspective, I don't know if anybody else feels this way, but I feel like when you're younger, your brain isn't fully developed, so you don't know what you like and don't like. And I feel like nowadays, now that I'm older, now that I'm an adult, and now that I know what I like, and now that I know what I don't like, I'm fully aware and have a clear conscience of what I'm into and I'm not into, what I like and what I don't like, Whereas back then, I feel like I wasn't as fully developed, so I didn't really have a good grasp on what I liked and what I didn't like. That's just my opinion. That's what I think. You know, I don't know if everybody's like that, but I feel like when I was younger, my brain wasn't fully developed, so I wasn't really fully aware of what I liked and what I don't like. So that explains why I did enjoy the fixed camera angle Resident Evil games back in the day, and why I did enjoy Resident Evil 5 and 6 back in the day. Whereas nowadays, Resident Evil 5 and 6 doesn't hold up. So yeah, but nowadays, when it comes to Resident Evil, you know, I like Resident Evil 4, Revelations 1, Revelations 2, RE7, RE8, RE2, and RE3 Remake. Those are the games I like. Those are the Resident Evil games I like. So this is kind of coming from a new fan that started from RE4. This is a new fan's perspective on where the series started and the old school games. And I'm basically going to tell you that I just don't like the old school Resident Evil games. I can't get into them. I'm going to explain why that is. Now, like I said, I respect where the franchise started, and I respect those games because we wouldn't have the survival horror we do now, and we wouldn't have RE4, and basically survival horror and what Resident Evil has become is thanks to the old school games and evolving from that. So I respect them for that and laying the groundwork and foundation for the survival horror and the Resident Evil games that we have and what we know to be now. But despite that being said, I just don't like the old school Resident Evil games, the fixed camera angle ones, and I just can't get into them. And the reason for that is, like I said, I did like those games back when I played them, but my brain wasn't fully developed and I wasn't really aware of what I like and I don't like. Whereas now, I'm aware of what I like and I don't like these days. So when it comes to the old school fixed camera angle Resident Evil games, the reason I don't enjoy them is because they're just not fun. They don't click with me and I don't find them fun. And I came to this revelation by revisiting the games. After I played RE2 Remake, not for the first time, but playing it again. So recent years nowadays, I revisited the original Resident Evil 2. I revisited the original Resident Evil 1. I tried some of the original Resident Evil 3. I revisited Resident Evil 0. I revisited Resident Evil Code Veronica. And I even watched a Let's Play. I watched some of a Let's Play of original Resident Evil, not original, but I watched a Let's Play of some of RE1 Remake. And my experiences with all those, I wasn't clicking with any of those games and I wasn't having fun with any of them. And it led me to a revelation, and it led me to realize that I am kind of in a weird position as a Resident Evil fan, whereas I just am not a fan of the old school games and I don't like them. It made me realize it. And it's a different perspective I want to offer. So yeah, sorry if this video is all over the place or if it's long, but I haven't done YouTube like that, so, you know, I'm not really used to being on camera and talking like I used to. But yeah, when it comes to Resident Evil, the reason I don't like the old school Resident Evil fixed camera angle games is, like I said, the reason I don't like them is because I just don't find them fun. I find them to be boring, they don't click with me, I don't enjoy them, and a lot of that comes down to how the game is made and what it feels like. You see, I don't hate survival horror. I do like the survival horror aspect of the old school Resident Evil games. I like survival horror. I love Evil Within, Resident Evil 4, Dead Rising 1. I consider that survival horror. So I like survival horror, the genre itself. But it's more so how the old school Resident Evil games feel and play in their camera angles is what I don't like, and why I can't get into them, and why I find them boring, and why I don't find them fun. And I prefer over-the-shoulder first-person horror, survival horror. I prefer over-the-shoulder and first-person survival horror and horror. I find those camera angles and the way they're made, I find those to be a lot more fun. That's what I prefer. I don't like fixed camera angles and the style and how it feels. So with the old school fixed camera angle Resident Evil games, the reason I don't like them is because I just don't find them fun to play. I don't find them engaging. I just don't find them fun to play. They're very boring to play. I can't get into them. They just don't click with me. And, it's not that the fixed camera angles are bad to control. I think I was able to control the fixed camera angles. It's not that I find them confusing or hard. This isn't coming from someone that's saying these games are not good or can't get into them because of the camera angles. No. Or in terms of the camera angles being difficult, I mean to say, sorry. So it's not so much that I find the camera angles hard to control. I think fixed camera angles are easy to control. I don't find them that hard to control, to be honest. They're not hard to control in my opinion. But it's more so that it's just not fun. And I think a lot of that comes down to how the game feels. With fixed camera angles, it's just a weird camera angle. With fixed camera angles, The reason I don't like the old school fixed camera angle Resident Evil games, why I don't like them and why I don't enjoy them and why I can't get into them and why they don't click with me is I just don't like how they feel and how they play, and they just don't feel very fun to play. I prefer over the shoulder and first person because I feel like it's a better perspective because you can see your gun more, you can see the enemies more. You know, it's a different, more it's a different, better feel. You know, with over the shoulder and first person, you can sort of see your character, you can see the guns more, you can see what you're shooting at. It has a different feel, more of a focus on the gameplay, so to say. And I just like the feel of over the shoulder and first person more. Being able to, you know, from the perspective of your gun and your character and the perspective of how the game looks and feels from the enemies and overall how it feels overall, I feel like it's just fun, immersive, and enjoyable, and I really like that. I like the style of Evil Within and Resident Evil 4. Like I said, I like survival horror, but the style I like is RE4 and Evil Within. That over-the-shoulder, even the first person of 7 and 8, I don't mind. The over-the-shoulder is my favorite. I don't mind FPS as well. But it's the fixed camera angle survival horror style that I don't like. I don't know how I would feel about Dino Crisis and Silent Hill, but I probably won't even bother with those games because I've tried the original Resident Evils, and if I don't like those, then I highly doubt I'm going to like Silent Hill or Dino Crisis because they're the same camera angles. But, you know, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know. So yes, that's what I wanted to talk about in this video basically, is that when it comes to the old school Resident Evil games, when it comes to the fixed camera angle Resident Evil games, I don't like them. And that's what this video is about. It's basically about why I don't like the old school Resident Evil games, the fixed camera angle games. That's what this video is about. It's about why I don't like old school fixed camera angle Resident Evil games. So yeah, the reason I don't like them is because I just can't. They don't click with me. I don't find them fun. I find them boring to play, and I just don't enjoy them. I don't like the way they feel, and I don't like the way it basically feels overall. Like with fixed camera angles, those Resident Evil fixed camera angle games, I don't like the feel of it and how it plays and just how it operates overall. I don't like it. I don't find it that fun, and just overall with like the fixed camera angles Resident Evil styled games, I don't like how they control and how they feel and how they feel overall. I'm just not a fan of them, and I don't find them fun. I find them very boring to play, and they just don't click with me. Whereas the over the shoulder and first person, I prefer those camera angles because I feel like it's from the perspective of your gun, a better perspective of the enemies. I feel like fixed camera angles brings back the focus on gameplay, to be honest. I feel like over the shoulder and first person camera angles, they have more of a clear perspective and they're more focused on the gameplay, and I just prefer them. Like I said, if there's anybody out there that feels the same way, I would be very curious to hear your opinion, you know, because I feel like I am in the minority, but I think it's a different perspective I want to offer. Like I said, I respect these old school Resident Evil games because if it wasn't for them, survival horror and how it evolved and the Resident Evil games we have, etc., none of that would be here. None of it would be possible. Maybe it would. I can't tell the future, but I feel like the old school Resident Evil games were it's definitely good that we had these games and they existed because of the survival horror we have now and how it evolved and how we have RE4. But I don't like the old school Resident Evil fixed camera angle games. I just don't find them fun to play. They're boring. I can't get into them. They just don't click with me. And that pretty much has to do with the camera angles, the fixed camera angles. I just don't like the way they feel and how they play and, you know, how they operate and how they feel overall, the fixed camera angles gameplay style. I just don't like the feel and, you know, I just don't like the feel of it overall. It just doesn't feel very fun to play. It's boring. I can't get into it. I prefer over the shoulder and first person because I feel like the more gameplay focus where you can see, you know, like I said, you can see the perspective of your gun. You can see the perspective of the enemies. It's more of a clear perspective gameplay wise. Like I said, the original Resident Evil games, the fixed camera angle ones, the reason I don't like them is because of the fixed camera angles. It's nothing to do with anything else because I like survival horror, but it's the camera angles themselves that I'm not a fan of. So I want to make that clear. It's not the genre or what they have you do in the game. You know, I like survival horror. Like I said, I like Resident Evil 4, I like Dead Rising, I like Evil Within. I like survival horror. But I don't like the camera angles and the gameplay of the old school Resident Evil games. I just don't find them very fun. I just don't find them fun to play. And that's basically all I wanted to say here. You know, I wanted to give this perspective out. You know, I don't know. I haven't done YouTube like that, so I'm sorry I'm not as I don't know. I'm just gonna go with the flow and go with how this video went. You know, I'm not trying to be perfect. You know, it's impossible to be perfect. But yeah, that's overall my opinion, what I basically wanted to talk about here. I wanted to offer this different perspective out there. So yeah, when it comes to Resident Evil, like I said, I like Resident Evil 4, I like Revelations 1, I like Revelations 2, I like 7, I like 8, I like 2 Remake, I like 3 Remake. And, you know, I like those games. But I like survival horror, and I like those games, and I like the over-the-shoulder and the first person. I like those camera angles, I like the genre. But when it comes to Resident Evil, I do kind of feel like I'm in a weird position as a Resident Evil fan, because where the franchise started and where some of the most beloved games are is what I don't like and what doesn't click with me and what I don't care for. I don't like the old school Resident Evil games. I don't like the fixed camera angle games. I just don't enjoy them. I don't find them fun. They don't click with me. It's not because the camera angles are hard to control. I think the fixed camera angles are relatively easy to control. It's just how the old school Resident Evil games with fixed camera angles, how they feel and play and operate, I just don't enjoy them overall and don't find them fun. I find them boring and I can't click with them. And that's my problems with the old school games. I much prefer over the shoulder and first person when it comes to games in general, when it comes to survival horror. I just feel like it makes for more of a fun, engaging, immersive experience. I just like the feel and how it operates with over the shoulder and first person. So yeah, that's basically what I want to say overall. Because like I said, when it comes to this revelation of mine, of me realizing where I stand in the old school Resident Evil games, I've played RE's, like when it comes to recent nowadays. In the past, I had fun with these games and I enjoyed them, but that's because my brain wasn't fully developed and I wasn't aware of what I liked and what I don't like nowadays. But when it comes to nowadays, my brain is fully developed. Now I know what I like, and now I know what I don't like. So I want that to be clear. So nowadays, I know what I like and I know what I don't like because my brain's fully developed. Now I have a clearer mind and conscience on, you know, my opinion on things and what I'm into and what I'm not into, you know. So yeah, nowadays, revisiting the old school Resident Evil games, like I said, talking about recently, nowadays, the age I am now, nowadays, I revisited Resident Evil 0. I watched a Let's Play of Resident Evil 1 Remake, only some of it. I tried the original RE1, tried the original RE2, tried some of the original RE3, tried Code Veronica, and I just couldn't get into any of these games. I couldn't enjoy any of these games. They just didn't click with me. I was bored, and all that comes down to their camera angles. I just don't like the fixed camera angles perspective. I find it very boring to play. It's just not immersive. I do not like the fixed camera angles perspective of those games I mentioned. I just don't find them fun. I find them boring. I don't like the way they feel and play. It just feels like they don't have a big focus on gameplay. They just don't feel good. So yeah, when it comes to the fixed camera angle style, I just don't like that style of Resident Evil. I don't like how it feels. And that includes with, like I said, the reason in general that I don't like the old school Resident Evil games, the fixed camera angle ones, the reason I don't is because I just don't like the way the games feel and play with the fixed camera angles. I just don't think they're that fun. I find them very boring. I prefer over the shoulder and first person because I feel like there's more of a clear focus and perspective on the gameplay of seeing your gun and how the game feels and operates. There's something about over the shoulder and first person, how they feel and play and operate, that I feel like makes for a much more enjoyable, fun experience. Whereas the old school fixed camera angle Resident Evil games, the way they play and feel and how it feels and operates overall, I feel like it just doesn't make for an enjoyable experience. It's very boring and just not fun. And like I said, I'm a fan of survival horror, but I'm just not a fan of the old school Resident Evil games and where the franchise started because of the fixed camera angles and how they feel and operate, and they just don't feel very fun to play. So yeah, that's my problem with the old school Resident Evil games. So that's basically all I wanted to say. This video was basically a discussion on why I don't like the old school Resident Evil games, the fixed camera angle ones. Like I said, I'm including those ones. Like I said, this video And it's basically me talking about, Resident Evil 0, Resident Evil 1, RE1 Remake, Resident Evil 2 and 3, the originals, Code Veronica. Those are basically in RE1 Remake, if I didn't already say that. Those are basically the Resident Evil games I'm talking about. Basically, those fixed camera angle Resident Evil games where the series started, I don't like, I'm not a fan of, and I don't care for that style of game. I like survival horror because I like Evil Within. I liked RE2 Remake. I liked RE3 Remake, though it was disappointing. I liked Resident Evil 4. I liked Dead Rising 1, Evil Within. So I like survival horror. I just don't like the style of survival horror that the old school Resident Evil games are. I just don't like the fixed camera angles perspective. I don't like the feel of them. I don't like how they play. I don't like how they operate. I just think it's not fun. It's very boring. And that's what was happening when I was revisiting Resident Evil 0 and Resident Evil 1 original, Resident Evil 2 original, Resident Evil 3 original, and Code Veronica. When I was revisiting and playing those games nowadays, I did not enjoy them. I didn't have fun with them. I was bored. They just weren't clicking with me, and I just didn't like them because I didn't like how they felt and played and operated overall with the fixed camera angles. I just feel like it was not very fun. I couldn't get immersed into it, and it just wasn't clicking with me. So that's my opinion overall. I hope I explain myself as clear as possible. If there's anybody out there that feels the same way, I would be curious to hear in the comments or a video response, because I know I'm in the minority with this opinion, because I know that the old school Resident Evil games are held in high regards. But this is from the perspective of a new fan. Like I said, I respect the old school Resident Evil games because if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have the Resident Evil we have now. Survival horror wouldn't have evolved to what it is now. But overall, when it comes to Resident Evil, I prefer the over-the-shoulder, first-person Resident Evil games. Like I said, that includes Resident Evil 4, RE7, Revelations 1, Revelations 2, RE2 Remake, RE3 Remake. I don't know if I'm forgetting anything else, RE8 as well. Those are the Resident Evil games I like, and that's what I prefer. I just prefer over-the-shoulder and first-person. First-person over-the-shoulder is what I prefer. I feel like the feel and gameplay of it and how it operates is just fun, engaging. I can get into it. It clicks with me. I'm having fun with it. Whereas the fixed camera angle perspective, I just feel like it feels boring and it doesn't feel fun to play, and I can't get into it. I don't like the way it feels and operates, and I feel like it takes a backseat when it comes to the gameplay. You know, how it looks and how it feels when you're shooting and when you're in gameplay. Like, just overall with fixed camera angle Resident Evil games, and fixed camera angles in general, how it looks, feels, and plays when you're walking around or when you're shooting enemies and stuff, it's just not fun. It's not enjoyable, and it doesn't click with me. I find it boring. So that's what I have to say overall. I hope I brought my point across enough. I know I kind of repeated myself a lot. Sorry about that, but yeah, I wanted to offer this perspective because I feel like it's a different perspective. I haven't really seen anyone give an opinion like this or talk about something like this. So yeah, when it comes to Resident Evil, that's basically what I wanted to say overall. And yeah, the reason I don't like the old school fixed camera angle Resident Evil games is because I just don't find them fun. They're boring. They don't click with me. I don't like the way they play and feel and operate overall with the fixed camera angles. Whereas I prefer over the shoulder and first person. That's all I have to say. Yeah.